Thanks, Dan. Again, it's exciting and it's great to be here with you this morning. I'm humbled to be able to give you a little bit of an overview and a rundown of what Masterpiece Retreat Center is and some of the ministries that we support. We were founded in 2020. That's when we established our 501c3. It's a faith-based organization here in Three Springs and the southern Huntington part of the county. But the dream goes back to 2001. That was when God gave us the vision and the dream for this type of ministry. Back then, we had no idea where God was going to lead us. In fact, a few years ago, we wouldn't have dreamed we would be where we are today. God has opened some incredible doors and unexpected doors, but it all stays true and stays centered on the mission that God gave us. And that's to share Christ's love with others and to help them to better understand the masterpiece that God made them to be, and to help them discover God's purpose for their lives. If you look over on the left-hand side there, that's our core verse, Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's masterpiece, or in some translations, it's handiwork. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do the things He planned for us long ago. We are all a unique masterpiece created by God for a specific purpose. And that's what we want everyone to understand. We go through a lot of trials, some more than others. But at the end of the day, we need to remember that God created us uniquely for a specific purpose. And that's what we want to help people realize and understand. We do that through a number of different events, but really what we try to do is plan, coordinate, and resource events to bring people with similar interests or experiences together in a Christ-centered environment. Whether that be veterans or people that love to hike or people that love to craft, we want an environment, we want to be able to provide a safe place for them to share their faith, to share their challenges, and just to share what they're going through in an environment centered on our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So I mentioned in 2020 was when we got established. We started off with a few small events that year. We went to the Orbizonia Rock Hill Homecoming, and we met a number of the different pastors and folks throughout the area. The biggest thing we probably did that year was the soup distribution. And that wasn't planned in the original vision, but God presented an opportunity for us. We saw, especially during COVID, it was a chance to reach out to people that weren't able to leave their homes. And we found not only here in this area, I was still in Virginia at the time. We were still living down in Springfield, Virginia. And we took a number of quarts of soup back with us, and we delivered them down there to shut-ins. And what we found is during COVID, we went up to a house, and we had known this couple for over a decade. I had sang with him in the choir, and they were very hesitant to let us even come on their front porch because of the scare and because of the fear around COVID. But as we reconnected and we sat on the front porch, they shared with us that over a year, we were one of only two couples to actually visit their house. You know, it wasn't about the soup. The soup was really good, and Rodney's an incredible cook. But it was about taking time out and spending some really incredible and precious time with people who were lonely, that were disconnected from the community. Story after story. I remember when Barbara and Larry, when they delivered their first quart, it was to a neighbor. And they had 7 quarts, or I think 6 or 7 quarts that day, and they figured they'd be back in an hour or two. And I think 8 hours later they came back. They realized it wasn't about the soup. It was about the relationships and the people that God was putting in their lives. So that was a humble beginning for us. We went from 7 quarts to about 132 quarts before we were led to at least put a stop on that for then, and we transitioned into some other ministries. But we'll never forget how that started. That first year, we also did some outreach with the nursing homes, with Woodland, with the Shirley Home, and with the Veterans Home in Hollidaysburg, putting together Christmas packages for them. We also had a leadership retreat trying to organize our next 1.5 to 2 years. And we started our hiking ministry that year. And you see some of the pictures down there in the bottom. If you love the outdoors, it's an incredible group of people. Sometimes we have people, we've had people from North Dakota, we've had people from Virginia that come and join us. It's open for everybody. It's an opportunity, and sometimes we'll have people there that are friends of others that may not know Christ. And we're going to do devotions. We're going to be sharing our testimonies. We're going to be sharing our faith in an environment that if you're out there hiking, you obviously love the outdoors. We try to make a hike that is easy for everybody. We've had some challenging ones. I shared earlier Then we had one particular hike. You see the abandoned turnpike tunnel there. We went the whole way through that thing, and we got to the other end, and two of our younger participants, they were afraid to go back in because of the dark. Well, how do you get back to the other side of the mountain? They took off up over the mountain. And Rodney and I led them up over the mountain, up by Breezewood, and we weren't sure what was going on. Those two youth didn't say a word up until that point. When we got to the top of the mountain and Larry came and picked us up and we went back to the starting point, they had had the time of their life. Rodney and I, we were just wanting to get back to civilization safely. He said they didn't stop talking the whole way back to Orbazonia. God had a plan that day, a plan that we couldn't have anticipated. And that's been true with our ministry over the last 4 years. God has opened doors that we just did not expect. In 2001, we started a series of pastor retreats to bring churches and pastors together, but also just to give our pastors and their families a chance to relax. We started craft events. There's a unique audience that just love coming together. I can tell you, I am not one of them. I will support those events, but I haven't gotten too far past stick figures, and you don't want me getting too far past that. But it's great seeing people come together. I know the Christmas event that particular year, it was planned for adults. But we had some youth come, and I think we stayed there an hour or two later that day because the youth were having so much fun with the crafts. Again, God had a bigger plan than what we could have anticipated. We had the Rock Hill Church of the Brethren ask us if we would help plan and coordinate and resource a children's carnival. And you look at the towns around here and you have 150, 200 people. In a little town of Rock Hill, we had over 70 children come to that carnival. But it wasn't just about the children, it was about all the volunteers from all the churches in that area that came together for a specific purpose to minister to children together, laying aside differences, laying aside barriers. In 2022, we did care package distribution, and that was really enabled by Crossview. You helped us resource that, and we sent care packages all over the world. I know they went to Germany, they went to the Middle East, they went to Japan, and it wasn't just military, we sent care packages to first responders. We had besides our pastor's retreat, we actually had our first retreat that year, and that was because my niece came up to us and said, I have an idea. She was about 20 at the time. She said, I have some friends and we don't have any place to get together to talk about our faith. Would you consider a young women's retreat or a college-age women's retreat? And we did. And that led in 2022 and 2023 to a college-age women's Bible study, which 1 month they would do it here in southern Huntington County, and 1 month they would go back over to Shippensburg because we had participations all over the southern part of the state. Again, that wasn't in the plan, but you got to be aware and sensitive to when God opens doors. We had been trying to get into the veterans home up in Hollidaysburg to minister to the veterans there. And in 2023, the COVID restrictions finally lifted, and they gave us a call back and said, would you be willing to come up and do a concert? There are some incredible musicians around southern Huntington County and Crossview, and being able to go up there and walk in, we weren't sure what it was going to be like, but we had about 30 veterans that first time, most in wheelchairs, and they loved the music. But what they loved more was having people take time out of their day to come and sit and listen to their stories. So we sing some songs, we sit and we share, and we just listen, and then we sing some more songs. In March was our latest concert up there. They try to schedule us every other month. And we went up to the memory ward or the secure ward. They asked us to go up and do an extra piece this time. And we walked in, and most of the team didn't realize this, but the TV they were actually watching gospel music. And they just had an incredible time. But what we found is they value the time with those willing to visit. Barbara, I think it was in our first visit, her ministry that she leads, Sewing for Jesus, had a number of quilts that we took with us. So we were able to hand out quilts. But there was one gentleman, he was probably in his mid-80s, he was in a wheelchair, and Barbara had her twin granddaughters with us. And he said, can I talk to your granddaughters? She goes, absolutely. He goes, I have great-granddaughters the same age, but I never get to see them. And so they went over and they talked with him, and they took a quilt that was made by the ladies here in the community and in the church, and they handed that to him. And he just hugged that and broke down in tears because somebody took some time just to talk with him. And so now as we go up there for our concerts, we still love singing, but we try to get more and more people to just come and sit with the veterans. The last trip we had, I think, 15 or 17 people that went with us, and only 7 or 8 of us were singing. But it's just a valuable time. Also in 2023, we began our veterans trips. Many of you have been a part of that, either as a veteran, a family member, or maybe a volunteer. Again, it's getting veterans together and their family members with shared experiences in an environment that's centered on Christ. And it's been incredible. We couldn't have anticipated what would happen on those trips, the connections that would be made, the memories that would be generated. You see some of our participants, some of the members of this church at the Vietnam War Memorial. We had 3 of our veterans lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in honor of veterans in Huntington County. And we're going to do that again this year. But again, you can't anticipate what God has planned. Those 3 veterans, they're standing there, and if you've ever been to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, everything goes on the second. And so they stood there for about 10 minutes, the best they could. They were almost 90 years old. And they were talking while they waited. And 2 of them, they served together in the 1950s in New Hampshire in a Nike missile battalion and never met each other until that day. They have a connection that has continued. But just as importantly, or more importantly, that picture in the bottom right-hand corner, that is Dale and Michelle Sherm. Dale was our oldest veteran. Michelle was with her father on this trip for the very first time. She didn't know much about his service in the military. And she's continued to stay in contact with us. She didn't know what her father had done 70 years ago. But he all of a sudden began to open up because he was in an environment that he was comfortable. She learned so much about her dad that day. A couple months later, we had a dinner for those veterans and their family members and our volunteers. And that picture was actually taken at the American Legion in Rock Hill, who happened to have a Nike missile sitting out there. So we snuck Michelle and her dad out of the dinner, and we took him up there. And he spent probably 20 to 30 minutes sharing with her how they manned that Nike missile battery in New Hampshire in the 1950s as part of the air defense system on the East Coast. Just incredible. Also last year we had our first 2 mission trips. We traveled to Florida to help with the Hurricane Ian recovery. Again, that wasn't on our scope. It was an opportunity that came out of the blue, and we were obedient. And we put together some teams, and those teams, for the most part, that team has stuck together. We just finished our 3rd mission trip down there. It's unbelievable. I don't have words for the destruction that Hurricane Ian laid across that part of Florida, but a lot of that destruction remains today. We'll be headed back on May 25th. This will be our last trip down there, as the organization we're supporting is getting ready to close out their mission. We're actually going to help them close out their mission. Chip's been with us every trip. Jaden went with us this last trip, and this morning he wanted to make sure this trip was on because he's really excited about going back. So we try to get youth involved as much as we can, whether it's our veterans trips, because the veterans love having the energy of the youth there. And it's amazing how they'll open up to some of our youth. So we try to get them involved as much as possible. So some other things that we're doing this year, we're going to continue those concerts at the Veterans Home in Hollidaysburg. If you'd like to be involved, just let us know. We have another one scheduled in May, July, September, and they normally ask us to come back in December because we try to coincide that with their Christmas parties. The next Veterans trip to D.C., we're currently full on that one. But that's going to be on 16 May, and it's exciting because it's bringing veterans and their family members and volunteers and youth all together where we can fellowship and build relationships. We'll have another veterans dinner, as well as we're planning a veterans train ride on the East Broad Top this year. Again, it's about bringing those people together. We have hikes scheduled for June, August, and October. We'll be ramping up the craft events again this year. We're also going to do another care package distribution, so we'll be getting word out about that. If you didn't know, the Pennsylvania National Guard is deployed right now to Eastern Africa, so we want to be able to support them, but also our first responders as well. God laid on Amy's heart, women's retreat, so we're looking at that later this year, probably in September or October. And the last thing here is the benevolence. This is something our team felt very strongly about, is whatever donations come in, we put at least 10% of that aside to help with local needs, whether there's a family disaster or some immediate need that we can help with in the local community. Again, when we began this organization and put this ministry together, it was about giving back to a community that's given so much to myself and to our family as a whole. We started this as a family, my brother Alan and his wife Michelle, Rodney and Kathy, Barbara and Larry, and my wife Amy and I. We've expanded beyond that now to other members of the community. But again, it's about giving back to the community, loving on others, and just sharing the love of God in different environments centered on Christ. Just a few thank yous. I want to thank Crossview Missional Church. It has truly been a partnership as we walk through this together, as we built this ministry. I want to thank Dan and Teresa for their mentorship, their advice over the years. Personally, that's meant, I don't have words for how much that's meant to myself and to Amy as we transition from Northern Virginia back here to work in this full time. For anybody that's participated in an event or volunteered in an event, it wouldn't be possible without everybody pitching in and being a team throughout all this. And finally, we just thank God for the opportunity for opening the door for us to serve. It's just been an incredible journey, and we're excited not only about what we have planned in the future, but what God has planned that we don't even know about yet. So how can you help as we move forward? Just continue to keep us in your prayers. Come join us if you see an event that you like, or if you have an idea of an event. Let us know. We'll try to make that event happen. And just spread the word. Let people know that there's a place that they can come, a safe place where they can share their stories, share their testimonies, learn more about Christ, and just experience God's love in a way that they've never experienced before. Thank you very much, Dan.